what does our religion teach us with regards to money and the forms of money that are considered to be halal, right? So the fact that at the time of Prophet Muhammad the system was running on a gold standard. So we had a clear separation of state and money, right? The French were trying to liberate religion and state. Why? Because from a Christian understanding and from a Christian experience perspective, the time when religion and state was together, it led to, think of the churches, the long wars, etc., a lot of oppression and people being on people's necks, etc. Whereas, actually, if you look at the experience from an Islamic perspective, every time when religion and state was together, it was actually a source of prosperity, right? Because if you think of the Ottoman Empire of the 600 years, when did the Ottoman Empire actually degrade? It was when they were trying to become European, when they were trying to become separation of the two, right? And that has something to do with the teachings of the religion, with regards to the teachings then, therefore, of the people that are basically running the country, right? So that's why Islam teaches us religion and state to be together, but it teaches us money and state to be separate. There's no concept in Islam of a central bank. There's no concept of a Federal Reserve of 12 people sitting in a room, knowing more about the economy than you and me, making decisions of telling you what the interest rate should. Why are you deciding on my behalf of what the interest rate should be that I have to pay? It makes no sense. Why do you know more? Like, from a very arrogant perspective, you can say, I've studied at the best universities, I was at LUMS, I then went to Harvard to do an MBA in I don't know what, or a master's in I don't know in finance. Why is it that you're better qualified than me as the head of the central bank to tell me what the rate of interest rate in Pakistan should be, basically? Why do I have to make my mortgage payment based on your decision, basically, right? It doesn't exist. In an Islamic perspective, there is never an individual between you and the Almighty, right? Allah Ta'ala, there is nowhere in between. We don't have the Christian tradition of, I have sinned, so I have to go to a priest to tell my sins, who will say, okay, you're forgiven. We don't have this, right? We don't have these concepts, they don't exist, right? For us, is La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, right? That's all that exists for us from an Islamic concept perspective, basically. So money and state is separated. That's why religion and state can be together. Because when money is not together with state, you can't corrupt. It cannot corrupt the leaders because they don't control the money. Because the money is not printable, it's not at will deciding of the flow of it. Basically, it's not controllable, it's decentralized. At the time it was gold, and in this world it's digital gold. Because at the time it was an analog world, and now we live in a digital world. So for me, I even go to this point where I say, if the founder of Bitcoin would have been Abdul Hakim Murad al something, nobody would have adopted it because they would have thought this is some terrorist currency. Because right now we have this reputation with these names, etc., as Muslims, right? That's why Allah has basically created it by using a name that was as neutral as it goes. Because at the time when it came out of Satoshi Nakamoto, you kind of think like, okay, this has to be a nice Asian guy that is like, that hasn't, that would never do you any harm. That's how it started, basically. So, and he's gone. So it did some selfless activity, published a paper, started a chain, and disappeared. And he's the richest, he's one of the richest persons on the planet right now. We're talking $2 trillion of value, of which around 200 billion is still owned by Satoshi Nakamoto, by his wallet. But he's not there, right? He's disappeared. So clearly the most selfless act anybody could have done, basically, right? For humanity, right? Or one of the most selfless acts, especially from a finance perspective, right? That for humanity, that one is done. So from that perspective, if you think of it, Bitcoin is the ability to put the people in government, the people in the right positions back into check. Because you can't print it, you can eliminate your central bank, And therefore, you have to run budget deficits, you have to run budget surpluses or budget neutrality. You can't be running budget deficits. You can't overspend to what you have, actually, because you don't control the money. If the US would have had no control of the money and they would have still gone into the global financial crisis, they would have gone royally bankrupt, basically, right? Because the only way they got out of it was by printing money, basically, right? Now, obviously, in the system of the gold standard, and it's quite funny actually, because Trump right now talks about the period of the United States where it was at the peak, which is the 1860s to the 1910s, basically. The 30 to 50 year, 40, 50 year period where the US was full of innovation, full of growth, full of prosperity for its people, for everybody equally. It was the part of the US where it was on the gold standard. That was the time until Bretton Woods won, basically, until the US then decided, to start printing its own money, the paper money, basically, right? So that's really telling. If you look at I was doing this analysis, you look at all of the thinkers of the Islamic history, right? The Avicennas, the Ibn Sinas, all of the top-notch names that you can think of from a philosophy, medicine, math, science, etc. All of them have come out at the time where either the Abbasi dynasty or the Ottoman Empire was purely running on a gold standard. So that is a very clear correlation between growth, prosperity, and the way your monetary system is being run, basically, right? Which is why I believe that Bitcoin is a digital gold and is the most Islamic form of money. And at National Zakat Foundation in 2016, we published a 71-page report of why Bitcoin is halal, basically, right? Mufti Faraz, our head of research back in the days, who is a Medina educated scholar, he has written that paper. He was the first scholar, one of the first scholars, I think the first scholar of accepted Islamic scholars that wrote that Bitcoin is halal. Imagine in 16, right? I mean, there was nobody that did say that at the time. So that's really how I see it, and which is why I thought it was such a big opportunity for Pakistan.